In 1911, the United States government looked at one man's business and decided it was too dangerous to exist. They took his company, which controlled 90% of all the oil in America, and ordered it to be broken into 34 separate pieces. That man had spent 40 years building what many people call the most powerful business empire in the history of the world, and the highest court in the country just tore it apart. His name was John D. Rockefeller. And here's the part that nobody talks about. After the government destroyed everything he built, Rockefeller became even richer, not a little richer. We are talking about the kind of wealth that no single human being had ever held in the history of the planet. He became the world's first confirmed billionaire, and the government that tried to stop him is the reason why. But to understand how that happened, you need to go back to a small farmhouse in rural New York, and a father who taught his son a lesson that John D. Rockefeller never forgot. John D. Rockefeller was born in 1839. His family had almost nothing. His mother was deeply religious, careful with money, and strict about honesty. She taught him to track every cent he spent, to save before he enjoyed, and to give a portion of everything he earned to the church. His father was a different kind of man entirely. William Avery Rockefeller traveled from town to town selling fake medicine to sick people who could not afford a real doctor. He disappeared for months at a time. He had a second family that his first family did not know about. People in his hometown called him Devil Bill. He once said to young John, "I cheat my boys every chance I get. I want to make them sharp." One morning, he took John into the forest and helped him climb to the top of a tall log. Then he stood below with his arms open and told John to jump. He promised to catch him. John jumped. His father stepped aside and let him fall hard to the ground. Remember, his father said as John stood up, "Never trust anyone completely, not even me." That moment planted something inside John D. Rockefeller that never left. A cold, quiet understanding that in this world, you're either the one who controls the situation or you're the one who falls. At 16, he got his first job as a bookkeeper earning 50 cents a day. He wrote down every transaction in a notebook he called Ledger A. He saved $800 by the time he was 20. He borrowed $1,000 from his own father, who charged him 10% interest, and started looking for an opportunity. He did not have to wait long. In 1859, workers drilling for water in Pennsylvania accidentally struck oil. Within months, an entire industry exploded out of the ground. Thousands of people flooded into the region to drill, and fortunes were made and lost overnight. Rockefeller watched it all and saw something different from what everyone else saw. The men drilling for oil were rich one day and broke the next because oil prices were completely unpredictable. But the refinery owners who processed the oil were making consistent money no matter what the price did. The real power was not in finding the oil. The real power was in controlling what happened to it after it came out of the ground. He partnered with a man named Samuel Andrews who understood the refining process, and together they built a refinery in Cleveland, Ohio. His business partner assumed they were equals. When tensions grew and the two men could not agree on the direction of the company, they turned to an auction to settle it. Rockefeller bid $72,500, an amount that his partner could not match. He walked out as the sole owner of the refinery. That, he said years later, was a day that determined my career. Most refinery owners in the 1860s ran businesses full of waste. They threw away the byproduct of the refining process, paid middlemen to handle their shipping, and accepted whatever rate the railroads quoted them. Rockefeller treated every single one of those inefficiencies as an opportunity. He built his own barrels and his own kilns to make the barrels. He collected the waste from the refining process and turned it into paint, lubricants, and other products he could sell separately. He tested how many drops of solder it took to seal a kerosene tin. The standard was 39 drops. He found that 38 drops held just as well. Across millions of tins, those saved drops became enormous savings. Then he went to the railroads with an offer they had never heard before. "I can guarantee you 60 carloads of oil every single day," he told them. "Rain or shine." No other refinery in the country could promise that kind of volume. In exchange, Rockefeller demanded secret discounts on his shipping rates. The railroads agreed immediately. While his competitors paid full price to ship their oil, Rockefeller paid far less. The cost gap made it impossible for anyone to compete with his prices. By 1870, he renamed his operation Standard Oil. By the late 1870s, Standard Oil controlled 90% of American oil refining. But simply being bigger was never enough for him. He went after every company that remained. The railroad deal had a second layer that most people never knew about. Beyond his own discounts, Rockefeller negotiated something called a drawback. For every barrel his competitors shipped on those same railroads, the railroad would take a portion of the competitor's payment and hand it directly to Standard Oil. Rockefeller was being paid from his rivals' own revenue. The more they sold, the more money flowed into his pocket. He also had something even more powerful than money: information. The railroads reported detailed shipping data to him. He knew exactly which competitors were growing, how much oil they were moving, and where they were most exposed. When his representatives approached a refinery owner with an offer to buy them out, they already knew every detail of that owner's finances. He would sit across the table, lay the numbers down, and explain precisely why the owner could not win. Then he would offer cash or Standard Oil stock in exchange for the business. Most sold. The ones who refused faced price wars that drove their margins to zero. They lost customers, fell into debt, and eventually went bankrupt. Rockefeller then purchased those companies for a fraction of what he had originally offered. He told one group of competitors directly, "Sell me now for Standard Oil stock or cash, or you will be crushed. Your choice." By the 1880s, Rockefeller faced a new challenge. Different states had different laws about how companies could operate, and it was becoming difficult to run a single coordinated empire across all of them. So Rockefeller did what he always did when he hit a wall. He invented a way around it. He created a legal structure that had never existed before, a trust. Multiple companies with separate names, operating in separate states, all secretly controlled by a single board. Standard Oil became a network that was almost impossible to locate or prosecute because, legally, it did not fully exist in any one place. At the same time, he turned his attention toward the world. In China, hundreds of millions of people use wood and animal fat for light at night. Rockefeller loaded ships with small kerosene lamps and gave them away for free to Chinese villages. Once families started using the lamps, they needed kerosene to power them, and there was only one reliable source of kerosene in the world. As the idea behind the strategy went, if you give a man a lamp, you own his nights. By the 1890s, John D. Rockefeller was worth over $900 million, 1.5% of the entire American economy. He was the richest man on earth by a margin that is difficult to describe. But the country was turning against him. A journalist named Ida Tarbell spent years investigating Standard Oil and published a series of articles that put every secret deal, every threat, and every destroyed competitor on the front page of American newspapers. The public was furious. President Theodore Roosevelt launched a full antitrust investigation. In 1911, after years of legal battles, the United States Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly and ordered it to be broken into 34 separate companies. The empire that took 40 years to build was ordered to be dismantled in a single ruling. Rockefeller was playing golf when someone brought him the news. He read the paper, put it down, turned to the man next to him, and said, "By Standard Oil." Here's what the government did not understand. When Standard Oil was one company, Rockefeller owned 100% of a single asset. When the court broke it into 34 separate companies, he still owned a significant share of all 34. And the market decided that 34 individual companies were worth far more than one combined company had ever been valued at. The stocks of every single spinoff surged in price simultaneously. The man the government was trying to punish became wealthier than he had ever been in his life because of the breakup. By 1916, John D. Rockefeller became the world's first confirmed billionaire at a time when the average American worker earned $800 a year, not despite the government's actions. Because of them. He lived to be 97. He gave away hundreds of millions of dollars and founded institutions, including the University of Chicago and the Rockefeller Foundation. Whether you see him as a visionary or as someone who caused real harm to real people along the way, one thing is impossible to dispute. The boy who was taught never to trust anyone built a system that not even the United States government could fully defeat. There has never been another one like him.